Okay, in today's lesson, we are going to be talking about routine, discipline, and flexibility. I know those things don't always get put together, and I think that's where a lot of ideas and plans and strategies in this area go wrong. Let's touch base on that first before we get too much deeper into the actual boots on the ground work of setting up a routine, especially here in the earlier stages of self mastery. You may have been working a recovery program of some kind. You may have encountered different modalities for creating like the most productive day or the optimal day or the miracle morning or smart goals, all of that stuff. You might already have some experience with that, but I want you to stick around and watch this lesson anyway, because we're going to bring in another component to help it be more complete. Something that a lot of these other modalities don't share often is the failure rate. Maybe you've experienced that yourself. I have, where I set this routine or I set my goals or I set my agenda and then it's all over the place and I don't actually stick to it. And I assume that I'm doing something wrong and there's something wrong with me. But that's not necessarily the case, and it probably isn't the case. Quick note, as I'm saying this, that I have a blue tongue. I was just eating a blue raspberry Jolly Rancher, so don't worry, I'm not like losing my appendages or anything. I was just eating candy. So in case you could see it and you're worried, it's just candy. All right, so to have a more complete model, we have to take into account that we are human. Now, that might sound really stupid because, of course, we're human, but other people put together these plans and these strategies without the human component in mind, or sometimes without life in mind, or that we are emotional creatures. Now, if you're like me, I did not want to face that fact. I was really proud of my logic and my reason and how analytical I was, and just like all that brain stuff I thought really was impressive and was superior in some way. It's very useful, to be sure, no doubt. Those are really useful skills, but they aren't really at the core of who and what we are. So that brings in the emotional component. And we're going to talk more and go more deeply into this in later lessons, but it's got to be brought in here and now for this to be a more complete model of discipline, routine, and flexibility. As emotional beings and as energetic beings, we're fluctuating all the time. Our energy is fluctuating. Our 100% fluctuates daily, sometimes throughout the day, right? And we can get caught in this idea that we're supposed to reach this optimal level of functioning and then stay there. And if we can just put the right pieces in, we'll have the perfect formula that'll keep us there, right? And that's what I often hear when I'm looking at these different modalities of routine and discipline. And then they don't work. And then I blame myself. And then I think I just got to try harder and I got to do more and I got to push more and like I got to be more disciplined. Yes and no. So I want to weave that in right here in the beginning, that flexibility is a essential component for self-mastery. It's an essential component for health, for thriving, for happiness, and to not break. So we're going to go through a lot of options today for routine and discipline and why they are important. You don't have to take on all of them, just to put that out there now. And you don't have to get them to this optimal level of productivity and functioning and then keep them there. It's not realistic. So I want you to include plenty of grace, patience, and curiosity when we are looking at these different components and fitting them together for what is right for you today. Okay. And each day. As weird as it is for those of us in the West, we are really experiencing a new day, a new canvas, a new version of ourselves every morning when we wake up. It's like we go through a little funeral at night and we die and we awake anew. Now, we might look the same, we might even feel the same, but biologically, we've actually shifted. At night, we're integrating all of this work we're doing, all the lessons, all of the guidance we've gotten, the struggles, the triumphs, whatever, we're integrating and we're shifting, right? So you might find something that works really, really well for you one day, and then the next day you're like, why isn't this working? I was just nailing it yesterday. Not any system. There's no system that's going to work the same every day. We're human, experiencing the human condition, and that is always shifting, and so are we. I want that to be our foundation, okay? Because we are going to talk about routine. We are going to talk about discipline and the importance of that on the self-mastery path. But we will fail if it's an incomplete model. And it's incomplete when we don't have the flexibility component. And that means grace, and that means patience. And when I say curiosity, I'm talking about approaching this like a scientist. What works today? What components mix with what for a really good outcome? What's making me feel good today? What am I needing today? Like being curious, right? All of this is just experimentation. There is no destination. I'll just tell you that here in the beginning. Something that worked for you really well in 6th grade didn't work for you well your freshman year of college necessarily, right? We have to grow, and that means going about this practice with open hands, open minds, and open hearts. That being said, there really is an important piece to this, especially when we are early on, and that is discipline. And when I say discipline, I don't mean force. I don't mean forcing ourselves to do things, though sometimes we do have to push ourselves to do it even if we don't want to, right? That is a component of it. But setting up habits can really lay that foundation for our discipline to become second nature. And all of these things actually create a structure for us to heal in. I know we talk about this in here often, that the brain can't do its healing work unless it perceives it's safe. If it doesn't perceive it's safe, because it's chaos all the time, it's not going to allow the healing to happen. And we know we can't thrive until we've healed, right? Or we're healing, then we're thriving. So discipline is a really cool part of that, because it gives us that structure, which creates the sense of safety, which lets our brains know, like, hey, it's okay. It's okay to let this in, to bring in new ideas, new growth, and to look at some of the old stuff too, which of course we're going to be doing a lot of. We can sometimes get in that black and white thinking. Well, which is it, Jace? Is it flexibility or is it discipline? Am I supposed to push myself to do things or keep it fluid and keep it loose? And the answer is yes. The further you go on the path of self-mastery, the easier it'll be to know what you're needing at what time. And this is how we get there, by experimenting, checking in with ourselves, just with no judgment. How'd this work today? How's this going today? It doesn't say anything about your character. Okay. When I was earlier on in my path of self-mastery, I used to keep this log, and I had these different checkpoints, and they all had ratings that went with them. And I scored myself at the end of every day on like how well I did that day at being like this human, right? And there was a use for that at the time, but it also added a lot of shame and judgment, right? Like I was giving myself a rating each day. So that might work for you for a bit. All I'm saying is don't attach yourself to anything. What works really well for you today might not work for you next week. And the point is, we want to find the tools that do work for you at this time, and then make sure you have access to tools to use later. And most importantly, to check in with yourself to know what is right for you. So discipline creates the structure that's necessary for healing, and flexibility keeps it human and allows for us to stay fluid in what is working, just a fluid use of different tools, right? So we're going to have both. We're going to practice. You're not going to just snap your fingers and get this. It's a practice with the system that's working for us, the tools that are working for us. It can be really helpful, especially in the beginning, to have a routine. A routine kind of frees up our mind and our brain to not have to be making so many decisions all the time. Routines help us set up habits, which allow our brain to be on autopilot in a strategic way. Now let's take a quick note. about habits. And I'm going to include my habits guide for people in recovery as part of this lesson as well, so you can dive more deeply into this. Our brains love habits. Habits are the brain's jam because the brain is always looking for ways to conserve energy just in case it needs to allocate our resources for physical survival, right? And so it's always looking for ways to make shortcuts in our brain and in our actions so that it doesn't have to think about them anymore and it can conserve that energy. It's happening whether we want it to or not. So when we set up these different things in the routine, we are strategically setting up habits which frees up our brains and our minds and our energy for other things, which is particularly important if we are early on in our sobriety journey, because there is a willpower component to sobriety. That's not the whole of it, we know that, but there is a component of willpower and of prefrontal cortex functioning, like emotional regulation, thinking about long-term consequences, making good discernments, things like that. So we do want as much energy for our brain to use for those functions as possible. And when we have a routine, we are actually releasing caloric energy for our brain to put elsewhere. It's like an investment. We are diversifying our portfolio of energy to put it into things that give us a better return. Okay. And the habits guide goes into that more thoroughly as well. I recommend that you check that out if you haven't yet. We'll cover a few things that can be really helpful in a routine and why they're helpful. Now, you're not going to use all of these at one time, okay? I'm going to recommend you pick 5 tops. Now, that might even sound like a lot, but remember, some of these are really short. It's not something you have to spend a long time doing. We're going to talk about a morning routine and we're going to talk about an evening routine. Now, these can be as short as 10 minutes, if that's the time you've got. They can be as long as an hour or 2 hours or 4 hours or whatever you want. Again, it's up to you. Maybe on Saturdays you have 2 hours, but on Mondays you have 20 minutes. Great. Stay flexible. There are no points for, setting aside 2 hours every day if that doesn't work for you. There's no points. It's just what helps you be who you truly are, living the life you want to live, right? So one of the greatest things we can do, it's one of the most difficult, so why we're starting with it, is creating time and space for silence. Now, I'm not talking about having music or a podcast or a guided meditation in the background. No, I'm talking about actual nothing, no intentional noise, silence. What you do in that silence is up to you. It can be silence while you're making your morning coffee. It can be silence combined with some of the other tools we're going to be talking about, like contemplation or meditation or connecting with your higher self or your spirit, whatever that means for you. But actually having silence gives the brain a break. Again, y'all know I love the brain. The brain processes everything that we are coming across, everything we see, everything we hear, everything we're sensing, right? Our tastes, our smells, all those little micro gestures, all like the tiniest thing, the brain has to process all of that. And when we have noise going on, even if that's our favorite music, like I was, had some funk music going this morning and I was having a dance party as I was making my breakfast, like it's not like it's a bad thing, but the brain is having to process all of that, which means energy, right? That means getting tuckered out. When we have silence, we actually give our brains a break and it gives it time to rest, which we need. So silence is nice on a mental, emotional, and spiritual level as well, but it's really important when we're talking about healing on that physical level, which we know is essential for this work that we're doing. It's essential for recovery and sobriety as well. When addiction is a system of the brain and body, we have to focus on the brain and body and giving it its best chance. Silence allows for that. That might mean 2 minutes of silence for you. Some people, that's all they can do. Maybe you just step outside for 2 minutes and you just don't have any noise going on. Maybe you listen to the wind or the birds chirping, or that, plane going over by or whatever, but no noise of your own. Silence is essential for this work. And of course, you can tuck that into other parts of your day as well, whatever feels comfortable for you. Let's touch on those other things that we talked about. Having time, and by having, I mean creating it, setting time aside to connect with spirit. I don't know what that means for you. You might not know what that means for you yet. That can be a cool way to use that time, actually, is to explore that. For some people, it's prayer. And prayer can mean 100 gazillion different things. I've had some clients who have, very specific prayers that they do aligned with their spiritual beliefs. I just have an open dialogue with spirit myself. It's actually pretty sassy and casual. There's lots of cursing. Some people have very formal ways. Some people have very casual ways. Some people are using it in an affirmative. Some people are using it as a time to do requests. Some people are sending love or light or energy. Some people are asking questions and listening. Prayer is a loaded word, I think, because a lot of us have religious trauma where prayer meant something specific, but that's not what we're talking about. I'm talking about whatever attempt to connect to spirit that works for you and that you're comfortable with. And remember, it's a practice. If you don't have a prayer practice, start exploring what feels good to you, what feels right for you. Google prayer practice and see what comes up and start experimenting. There are so many types of prayer, so don't get caught up, but it is a really excellent thing to include in your morning routine. Meditation or contemplation is another awesome thing to include first thing in the morning. That can be tied into your silence time. It can be tied into your prayer time. You could do a little combo action and bring all of those in. Meditation is really important for this work that we are doing because it trains the brain and it creates different pathways in the brain and gives us more access to the calm and connected parts of the brain and our nervous system, as well as actually changing our brain chemistry. It's just pretty cool. I don't know why we don't talk more about that with meditation. Like, yeah, it's neat as far as like letting go of stress, being in touch with spirit, maybe manifesting. Some people use meditation for that. There's all sorts of meditations as well and different styles of meditation, but including whatever your meditation practice is into your morning routine can really make a huge difference for your day. And we'll talk more about meditation as well as we go along. And don't think meditation has to be a whole thing. I used to think, I went in my meditation practice from like not being able to sit still for 3 minutes. That was my nightmare, to doing Vipassana training where we were meditating for 12 hours a day, right? Like that's like that extreme that I used to live in. And so when I came back from the course, I felt like if I wasn't meditating for at least an hour a day, like I was just trash and like not doing it right or whatever. No, who cares? Whatever works for you, whether that's 1 minute of just focusing on your breath and connecting with your body, or it is an hour, or it's any time in between, like just sitting in stillness for an amount of time makes a huge difference in our day. There are some things you can do that in written form or verbally or just in your mind that are great additions to the day as well. Having a gratitude practice. You're going to hear me talk a lot about gratitude. Including a gratitude practice at the beginning of your day actually lets your brain know what to be looking for throughout the day as well. Plus it feels good, which is really nice. It gets us into a different part of our brain and body, and long-term done over time actually changes our brain chemistry as well. I'm like really big on this brain chemistry thing. I'm sure you're picking up on that by now. That can be listing 3 things you're grateful for. Could be having a gratitude journal and just writing a few things like, oh, my significant other made my coffee this morning exactly how I like it and brought it to me. Like, what? That's amazing. Like, I'm so grateful that he or she or they did that. It might be I have a functioning body. I was able to get up out of bed today and like go on a walk. Like, wow, that's amazing. I'm super grateful for that. Right? Just getting into that space of appreciation is really cool to do first thing in the morning. Another component to that is affirmation, claiming that which we know to be true or that which we want to be true, even if we don't believe it yet. I know affirmations have gotten a lot of weird press lately, if you will. It's kind of like magical thinking, but that's not really what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about getting in touch with who you truly are and claiming that truth for yourself. You might not be totally sure who that is yet or what's underneath there. That's okay. You can still claim the truth anyway. It's still going to have a really big impact. So maybe there's something you want, something that you included in your going beyond motivation lesson about who you want to be. Start claiming that. Bring that in now. Maybe, like for me, being a person of integrity is really important to me. And so I would just claim, I am a person of integrity. That's it. It's simple. I'm going to add a supplemental video about affirmations to this as well. We talked just briefly, I slipped it in, about going on a walk. Exercise, moving your body. Doesn't have to be CrossFit, doesn't have to be anything in particular, doesn't have to be yoga, or it doesn't matter. Just getting your body in motion, getting your energy moving, getting your systems woken up and online, and just getting into the physicality of the human condition is a great thing to include in the morning. Maybe it is going on a mile run. Maybe it's going on a bike ride. Maybe it's doing Tai Chi or Qigong. Maybe it is yoga. Maybe it's Pilates. Maybe it's running around and playing with your kid. Maybe you're just stretching. There's no superior version of exercise. It might just be a walk. I take my dogs on a walk each morning, and I just do that in silence and enjoy their company and enjoy the movement of my body and nature around me. Totally different day than when I don't do that. So having some form of exercise, whether that's 5 minutes of jumping jacks or 45 minutes at the gym or gentle stretching, whatever. There's no right way to do any of this. Just finding something that gets your body in motion is going to make a big impact on the rest of your day. Let's talk about writing. When we write, and I'm not talking like this, I'm talking old school, pen and paper, if you remember that, and actually using our writing to help us process and grow. There's actually a different connection that happens between the brain and the body and our mind and our subconscious phase of mind and our emotional state and all of these things that happens when we write it out with a physical pen and paper. Or maybe it's on your tablet or, something like that, but not typing. I'm talking about writing. And that could be one page. You don't have to spend an hour writing about your feelings, and you can, but just even writing one page. Here's how I'm feeling today. Here's what's going on for me. Here's what's coming up for me. I had this dream last night, and here's, what it was. I'm feeling fear today for this and this reason. I woke up and man, the world is my oyster. And here's what's going on, right? It's just getting our experience down on paper in whatever form feels right to you. Dear diary, whatever, captain's log. It doesn't matter. There's no right way to do these things. Just find a way that works for you. Some people like to write for a specific amount of time. Some people like to write a certain amount of words. Some people like to write like a page, like I used to do. Some people just like to go freeform. Whatever comes out, and that's what they do. Find something that works for you and just keep it about your personal experience, what you are witnessing, what you're noticing, what feelings are coming up, what emotions you're in, what thoughts you've been having. Just process your human condition on paper. That will help. And it's really fun because later you can go back and look at all of this stuff and see where you were and how far you've come, and like, whoa, I can't believe I used to think that way. And like, oh my gosh, I totally remember that. I haven't thought about that in years, or I haven't shown up that way in so long. Like, it's really neat to be able to have that log to look back on. So writing is a really great component. Another one, what? There's more. You don't have to do all of these. Remember, you're just going to pick a few of them and experiment with them in the coming week or weeks. And see which ones feel good for you, see which ones help you get to where you want to be in the day, help you be in alignment for the day, whatever it is. Learning, touching base with our self-mastery work, with our growth and our healing. That could look like listening to a TED Talk while you're getting ready for the day. It might be learning something on your way to work. Maybe you have an audiobook. It could be sitting down and reading materials that help you align. It could be touching base with our lessons here in the program. Whatever that means for you, whatever makes sense for you, learn something each day. It helps us to stay in momentum with this work, even if it doesn't feel relevant. The cool thing about self-mastery is everything's relevant because everything filters through the self. So it all is relevant, I assure you. It also gets us in touch with something outside of ourselves that is in the larger world. I don't know about you, but I can get caught up in my stuff and my bubble and my universe and my reality and forget, like, oh yeah, there's this whole wide world out there of other people doing amazing things. I like to watch or listen to inspirational things, people who are accomplishing wonderful things or achieving their dreams or working towards it and failing or whatever it might be. Maybe you're wanting to learn a language. Just keep that learning muscle going, and it will be a big help to you. Now, all of these are included below, and a reminder as well that you don't have to take on all of them. And in fact, it probably wouldn't be helpful to do so. I'm not going to say it won't be because I don't know. Maybe it would be for you. But if we're overloaded and our routine is causing us a lot of stress and pressure and it's disrupting our day and our alignment, well, then that's not really helpful, right? So you're going to have to do trial and error with what works for you. I know a lot of people just want to be told, do this for 10 minutes, do this for 10 minutes, do this for 10 minutes. Like, this will work. Do these things. I promise it will work. That's a lie. That's an illusion. I can tell you that. This is self-mastery. You've got to find what helps you master yourself. And here are some suggestions on how to do that. Now, those are all in the morning. Let's talk briefly about an evening routine. This might be when you are getting done with work. It might be as you are preparing to wind down. It could be right before bed. Just something towards the end of your day to kind of help, like, have a nice bookend to the day and have even that larger container within the container, that structure, right? So you'd have structure in your day as well, which feels really good. Fun fact, you don't have to do this forever. You don't have to keep a routine forever. Just FYI, it might work for you now and then it might not work for you later. So don't worry, this isn't the rest of your life. And it can be. I know some people who are very dedicated to their routines for their whole lives, for years and years and years, and they love it. I don't hold a routine anymore. That's not something I'm needing at this point. And sometimes I am. So yeah, who knows? So in the evening, one of the best things I can ever teach you that helps with serenity and reducing anxiety and bringing down our stress hormones and all of that is to create your agenda for the next day the night before. Have an idea of what needs to happen the next day. Maybe it's work stuff, could be family stuff, could be stuff that's fun that's coming up. It might be your hobbies, it might be community obligations you have, might be learning opportunities, whatever. Make an agenda that works for you for the following day. Do not do that in the morning. Do it the night before for the next day. Your brain's gonna love it. It's gonna be all about it because you're gonna wake up, and I don't know, I'll speak for me. I used to wake up with dread every single day. My anxiety was so high, it was through the roof because I didn't know what to expect that day. And I didn't have stability yet. And so it was like, I felt like anything could happen that day, which is exciting now. It was terrifying at that point, and my brain did not like it. So when I would wake up and be like, oh, what am I going to do today? What does today entail? I'd be like, oh, it's right there. And my brain would be like, oh, thank God. Okay, we do have an idea of what's going to happen today because we already mapped it out. So set your agenda the day before for whatever you happen to know is coming up on the next day. And you might even leave a little breathing room, like a little room for contemplation at the end of the day to do the things we're talking about now and set your agenda for the next day. That could be fun. Again, these can be combo actions, right? I want to invite you to bring gratitude into the mix in the evening as well. Even if it's just three things you're grateful for about your day and how you showed up in it. I really encourage you to include yourself in some of those gratitudes as well. Again, that can be written. You can keep that in your journal, or you can just speak them out loud. Maybe you have a spouse or a partner or a friend, or you live with your family or whatever, and it could be a fun thing to do together. Here are some things I'm grateful for today. A partner and I used to do that right before we fell asleep. We would each say 3 things we were grateful for. It was really nice. Now I do it with my dogs. I don't know if they listen, but they seem to receive it pretty well. So gratitude at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, really helps us keep a larger perspective of things as well. I know we can get caught up in the struggle and that this can be challenging and a lot of work. So having a moment of being like, oh yeah, that was really cool. I just remembered that. Helps with keeping this a little bit lighter, which means we'll be able to do it longer if we have that component in. And just a reminder again, it actually does shape the brain in a different way and gives our brain something different to look for instead of all the things that went wrong in the day, which sometimes we can get caught up doing. Which brings me to my next point. As you journal in the evening, which I encourage you to do as well, especially if you've incorporated that as a morning practice, is to do a review of your day with a twist that you may or may not have received from other places. I want you to focus solely on what went right. How did you kick butt today? What decisions did you make that were really healthy for you? How did you stay in alignment or bring yourself back into alignment? How did you show up in your relationships that was right how you wanted to? Maybe you did something great at work. Maybe no one will even notice, but like that email was just like, oh, so like it was written just like so perfectly. You even got that like great witty joke in, and who cares, whatever. And if you're having a hard time finding things at this point that you did well, just find one thing. You don't have to make a huge list. Find one thing. Maybe it's, I got up today and I really didn't want to, but I did. And I did my responsibilities and I am writing in this journal now. Maybe that's it. Sometimes it's an accomplishment when I brushed my teeth that day, especially early on. So it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be like, I took over the business today and like became CEO, and they've actually renamed it after me. And, it doesn't have to be huge, and it can be. But let's honor the little things as well. Every choice we make that aligns us with our true selves and that is not escaping, that's not taking the easy way out, is a win. There are no small wins. We're going to talk about that later. So just keep track of them. Don't focus so much on what didn't go well. If we put our energy there, that's what's going to keep happening. So let's have our energy go to what did go well, and maybe even how we could level it up the next day, right? Like, oh, I did my exercise today and it felt really good. But when I got to the end of it, I felt like, oh, I still got like 10 minutes in me. Well, boom, maybe tomorrow do that 10 minutes if you're still feeling it, right? Keep it loose. But you can do that too. Like, oh, but I actually wanted to meditate for like another minute. I was really feeling it. Well, great. You can do that. Just because you did something well doesn't mean there's not a way to adjust it that feels better for you or more in alignment. You can always be doing that. I want you to bring your silence back in at the end of the day as well, especially at the end of the day, because our brains have been working so hard for us throughout the day. Let's let it have a rest. And when we're sleeping, remember, the brain is not sleeping. It is working. Your body is healing all these things. Your brain's processing, it's integrating. The subconscious phase of mind is too. Like, your brain doesn't go to sleep when you do. Your body is still in motion. So let's give it some rest, which is different than sleep. Let's let the brain rest by giving it some silence. And I really feel confident that you'll notice a difference in your day and in your experience and your progress on this path if you connect with spirit, highest self, goddess, the universe, love, nature, whatever we call it, at the end of your day as well. And again, whatever prayer, meditation, contemplation looks like for you, you might still be experimenting with it. That's cool. If you do it at the beginning and the end, boom, 2 opportunities to experiment. But take some time to do that. None of this stuff has to be long. I realize we've just gone this whole lesson talking about a dozen plus different things that you can do as part of your routine. You don't have to do them all. You don't have to do them all for a long time. These can be little snacks that go in there. But do start incorporating some of them and spend this next week or weeks experimenting and tracking. So a cool thing to do in your journal, especially while we're in this practice, is to log what tools you have used that day and which ones worked really well for you. Ooh, exercising this morning really gave me that like burst of energy. I just like felt energized all day. Bam. Yes, let's include exercise in the mix if that made you feel really good. Whatever ones you're trying out in your evening journal, log which ones worked for you, which ones felt good. And if some aren't working, just like we talked about in that adjacent possible video in optimizing your program, don't throw them away. Just tuck them away in your back pocket because they might become useful to you later. You don't have to use them all. You don't have to do them for a long time. Okay, I want to just really get that in there. Flexibility helps this be a complete process, the yin and the yang, the action and the more passive motion, right? The giving and receiving. We want all of this holistic, right? That's our jam, holistic. We want to incorporate all of it so we have a complete system, a complete process, a complete program. So flexibility and discipline in your routines. Now, quick note on that with the discipline component is do your best to have these happen at the same time of day. That's going to help create that structure. It's going to help it be a habit as well. You might have to set a reminder for yourself. That's okay. Have it go off on your phone, have a sticky note up, whatever you got to do to have these become habits through repetition and doing them around the same time of day. You can bring these into the middle of your day. You can also include them on the sprinkled in throughout, whatever, but really try to have a morning and an evening routine until it doesn't work for you anymore, until you get to that point of healing where your brain's like, boom, we're solid, we're secure, I got structure, I'm good. If you're not feeling in that place of stability and serenity most of the time, that peaceful state most of the time, having a routine is going to really help with that. And we got to have discipline to have a routine because we got to make sure we're doing these things and we're setting up reminders and whatnot to help us stay there. And life happens. Maybe you have to take your kid to the ER. Well, you're not going to be like, oh, sorry, Matthew, we're going to have to stop here real quick because I need to meditate. No, you're taking Matthew to the emergency room, right? And then you might shift it in your day. So try not to skip it, especially not 2 days in a row when we're building habits. If we skip 2 days in a row, it's not solidifying in the brain. If you have to shift it throughout your day occasionally because of life circumstances, fine, that's okay. Don't beat yourself up. We're humans. This is the human condition. Self-mastery is the long haul. It is not a magic pill. It doesn't work overnight. We are learning, we're integrating, we're growing, we're healing, we're thriving, and this is how it happens. Routine, discipline, flexibility. We got to have all of them. So use this week and the coming weeks to practice with these different ingredients. See what makes the yummiest recipe for you to have the day you want, to be the person you want to be, living the life you want to live. So you can be thriving and living that boldly satisfying life. There is not field work with this because you're going to be logging your own and you're going to be choosing your own adventure when it comes to this routine. I look forward to hearing about it in Tribe Session.